Hi, I'm Tig Rainey and welcome to Tig's Creations, my new YouTube channel. To introduce myself, I'm a retired professor of neuroscience who, having taken early retirement, suddenly found myself with way too much spare time on my hands. And then COVID hit. So like everybody else, I was sort of pretty much stuck at home, and pretty soon I had polished off all of the small home improvement plans that I'd been thinking about doing for years but never having gotten round to doing. That took me approximately 2 to 3 months into the pandemic, and then I realised that I had still an awful lot of time on my hands and I really needed to think up some projects to keep myself occupied and relatively COVID free. I had always had a long-standing interest in woodworking, and over the years I'd made several jewellery boxes for various people out of exotic hardwoods and even the odd bit of furniture for here in the house or elsewhere. And so I decided that that was probably a good starting point for me to maybe think about trying to set up a small business to produce things that people might be interested in purchasing. So that's what I did. I started making small hardwood boxes, jewellery boxes or keepsake boxes downstairs in my small workshop area, and it was going great. But then I decided that I really wanted to add a little bit more to what I was producing in terms of design effect. Although I was brought up in the great city of Leeds in Yorkshire, my father's family hails from Scotland, particularly Aberdeenshire, and I've always had a great love of Celtic art and craft design. And so what I wanted to do was try and introduce some of that type of design, ideally in brass wire inlay or silver wire inlay, into some of my boxes. So that started a really irritating period of this project. To all the people out there who do hand inlay of either brass or silver wire for either on, say, gun stocks or just in terms of design effect in wood, my hat goes off to you. You are seriously skilled craftsmen and women. It turns out I absolutely suck. These are a couple of the best examples of what I could produce, and those are done in relatively soft wood. Took me a hell of a lot of time, and I never really liked how they looked and how they finished up. So the last thing I wanted to do was make a really pretty jewellery box or keepsake box and then screw up the end result by making a mess of the wire inlay. And herein lies the trip down several rabbit holes. As I mentioned earlier, my background is in neuroscience, and more particularly in neurophysiology, in which we try and work out how individual neurons, in my case in the central nervous system of the brain, communicate to each other, and how things like stress might make that communication go wrong. And to be able to do this on such a minute level, you need to automate systems for seeing individual neurons and then being able to record the information transfer between these neurons. And so once I realized I was such a flop at hand wire inlay, it occurred to me that there was a system out there already in existence that could help me get round this problem, namely CNC. So CNC literally is computer numerical control. It's the acronym for that. And I think many of you are probably familiar, or maybe more familiar, with 3D printers, which are relatively freely available these days, where you use a computer and make a program to design a particular thing that you're wanting to make, and then you feed that information into these 3D printer, which then build up in layers the particular thing that you're wanting to make, whether it be, say, a chess piece or whatever. The application for me was actually the complete reverse, in that I was starting off with a piece of wood with known thickness, and I wanted to program a system to be able to carve out these Celtic outlines that I'd been trying to do by hand, and the CNC is the perfect machine for this. Basically what you're doing is using a computer to send information to a cutting machine to basically say, follow along this line and cut at this width and at this depth, and Bob's your uncle. You know, you can do the Celtic designs. And so I started thinking about investing in a CNC machine. That was rabbit hole number one. Rabbit hole number two was realizing that in my small workshop downstairs, I didn't actually have any room to put a CNC machine. CNC machines come in a variety of sizes, ranging from big industrial cutting machines to small desktop machines that are about maybe 3 feet by 3 feet. But even these small ones were too big to fit in my shop. So I had a bit of a problem. Rabbit hole coming up. So I live on a cul-de-sac, dead end, at the bottom of a hill, where the property line at the front of my house by the road is about maybe 25-30 feet above the property line at the back of my house. So when the builders built my house, I live in a bungalow, a single storied house, ostensibly, but they dug into the hillside to lay the foundation, and consequently I have the surface area of the house below me below grade, and this was never developed by either the previous owners or myself, and so was relatively rough and tumble. But apart from my workshop downstairs, there was an area downstairs that I had built a small bar area, and it had a pool table in, and so when I ran my lab we would have parties down there. There was sufficient room for all of us to fit in and have a pretty good time. But once I retired, of course, that becomes pretty much a waste of space. So thinking about the potential arrival of a CNC machine, the reconstruction rabbit hole started. Remember, of course, that this is all during the pandemic, so this wasn't as though I could rush out and hire a whole load of contract workers to come in and do what I wanted to get done. And apart from that, I'm sort of cheap in many ways. So, and I don't mind getting mucky and doing the hard graft. So I decided I would do it myself, which entailed ripping out pretty much most of the stuff that was down there. This will be a subject of one of the episodes from this channel, and you know, it was really basic down there. It was a concrete slab floor. There was old fake wood walling on sparsely separated half-inch stud. So there was no insulation. There was nothing in there. It really was just an empty hole once I ripped all of the boarding away. And so then I obviously had to go in and do the framing, putting up the drywall, modelling everything the way that I wanted it to be, and then doing the finish work on all of that, pretty much all of myself, with the exception of getting the materials brought in by the local big box store, Lowe's. So in and of itself, it was a long and sometimes very frustrating process, but in the end I'm really happy with the way things turned out, and having put all of that effort into it gave me the excuse to buy a CNC machine. Okay, long story short, this has rambled on for longer than I'd anticipated for an introductory channel offering. But anyway, so yes, I bought the CNC machine, and in learning how to use that and what was available, primarily using resources that I was watching on YouTube, I realized that just simply doing wiring inlays was not using the system to its full advantage. So I looked at other applications, and a lot of people were using CNCs to carve out larger inlays and do inlays with epoxy resin, and that was really appealing to me because of the dyes that are available. You can pretty much make an inlay whatever color you wanted, and that was very attractive for doing some design. So I started looking into that. Rabbit hole number whatever we're on now, 3 or 4, and in looking at that, I came across people doing wood and epoxy live edge riverboard work. So I started thinking about that, and then because of that, I came across people doing custom handmade charcuterie boards. So yes, you guessed it, I started having a go at that as well, and before I knew it, I had a whole load of things that I'd made and no vehicle to put them on display. So I decided that I would create a website, which is tigscreations.com, which is now online, and basically show what I'd been doing in my workshop. And I was quite pleased with the result, but it seems that it's a very hard market to get people to know what you're about simply by having a website. So one day I was talking with my daughter, and she's in her late teens and is very active on social media, particularly TikTok and things like that. And so she'd sort of said, well, why don't you show how you do things? And this is something that a friend of mine had also said, who'd seen the stuff that I'd produced on my website, and sort of said, look, I'd really like to know how you made that. And so that became the impetus to try to put this channel together. And what I'm hoping that it will be a rather fun journey through the ups and downs of my success or failure in terms of making stuff, designing stuff, getting stuff out there for people in general to see what I'm doing, hopefully get feedback on what I'm doing, rights or wrongs or whatever. And I really do hope that this takes off. I look forward to getting feedback, as I say, from you guys. As I've learned from watching other YouTube videos, please like and subscribe if you're at all interested in this channel. In the very near future, I'm going to be bringing information episodes on creating the stuff that I've talked about a little bit earlier, the basement reconstruction, the microhydroelectric project that I got embroiled in, some gardening things that I'm doing, potentially some cooking stuff. I really enjoy cooking, and also if there's any interest in there, discussing certain aspects of neuroscience. So I think it's going to be a pretty varied channel with a range of interest. So that's me done yabbering on. I hope you enjoyed this, and you want to come back and revisit in the future. Either way, stay safe. Take care.